guys, this is Miss Harvey coming to you live with another episode of Reading Class in Virtual Learning. So, as a disclaimer, please ignore the black box at the right-hand bottom corner of the screen. My computer decided that it only wanted to work with these recordings if I put the black box there. So we all get to look at the black box for fun today. Okay, we're all just going to ignore it. Moving on. So, today is Wednesday, March 25th. So, in front of you, you should have the text that is labeled Fireflies, the Twinkle in Nature's Eye, because that is Wednesday's text. You also have in front of you a pencil if you are writing on a physical packet. If you don't have a physical packet, you know that you have it open in a separate tab. And then you have a note taking sheet that you can jot down notes on. So go ahead and gather those materials, pause the video until you're all set. Okay, so you should have all your materials in front of you ready to go. So today we're going to start by scrolling through our text so that we can take note of a couple of different features throughout it and do something helpful as readers of jotting down notes so that we don't forget to read any parts of our text and we don't forget to pay attention to really special things in it. So I'm going to pull out my handy dandy pen here and I'm going to use that to write some notes as I am scrolling through the text. So the first thing I notice is that there is a blurb. I am definitely going to do my best to outline that blurb in some color so that I know to make sure that I read it. I should never, ever, ever skip the blurb. Next, I'm going to read the title, Fireflies, the Twinkle in Nature's Eye by Terry Krautwurst. Okay, as I scroll through, I'm going to take notice that there are different sections here. So maybe I should break up my reading by section. I notice that there's a text feature here. So again, I'm going to outline it in blue. Can't forget to read those text features. They're super important. As I continue scrolling, I see that there's another text feature that I want to make sure I read. So I'm going to put a little mark around that in blue too, so I know that I don't skip it as I'm reading. Awesome. Now I'm going to go back up to the top of the text, and I have to figure out what genre this text fits in. So right now I want you to think to yourself, is this going to be a fiction text or is this going to be a nonfiction text? Pause the video here. Okay, so you should have come to the conclusion that this is going to be a nonfiction text, and it's going to be about a topic, and the topic here is fireflies. So, if it's a nonfiction text, I want you to think to yourself now, as a reader, what should you be jotting and tracking as you're reading a text if it's nonfiction? I know so many of you got that right because we've done so much practice with this in class every day. So, if it's a nonfiction text, then you know that you should be tracking for the topic and what the author is teaching you about the topic. So, whenever we track for the topic and what the author is teaching us about the topic, what does that help us find? I'm going to call on somebody. Kesner, you, what does that help us find? Of course, you're exactly right. That helps us find the main idea of this text, okay? So I'm going to now scroll down to the bottom of the text, and by the end of the text, I should be able to clearly say to myself what the topic was. Forgive me for how long this takes me to write. What the author taught us about the topic, and I'm just gonna shorten that because this is going to take really long if I write that whole thing. So I'm going to write taught, and then we should be able to have a clear main idea. Almost there, stay with me. Okay, so we know that as we are reading, we have a job. Readers annotate as they are reading so that they can better understand a text. And because this text is nonfiction, I know that I'm going to track for the topic, what the author is teaching me about that topic. And at the end of the text, I should be able to come up with a main idea for the entire text. Okay, so I'm going to scroll back up to the beginning of the text now, and let's go ahead and read the blurb together. You may have seen fireflies blinking and flashing on a summer night. As this article explains, fireflies use light to communicate with one another in interesting ways. Read the article about fireflies and answer the questions that follow. So, right now, we're going to do exactly what this blurb just told us. We're going to read this article about fireflies and we're going to learn about all the interesting ways that they communicate. Okay, so you're picking up your pencil, you have your note taking sheet in hand, or you have the physical copy of the text ready to go. You're jotting, you're annotating, you're keeping those three things in mind as you're reading. Pause the video and do that now. Okay, if you just unpause the video, that means that you've read the entire text, but not so fast. If you've read the entire text and yours looks like mine with no annotations and nothing has been jotted down in the margins, or if your scratch paper is completely blank, then you haven't done your job as a reader. You need to go back and in each section of the text, you need to be jotting down and writing notes that help you answer this question. What is the topic? What did the author teach you about the topic? And the main idea of the whole text. So if you haven't done that, then you need to go back and now you're going to do your job as a reader. Pause the video here and do that now. Okay, now that you have annotated your text and you've jotted down notes, let's go through the text and let's talk about a couple things I noticed as I was reading. So, I of course read my blurb over again, and then I read this little introductory section here. The author was mainly just introducing and giving me a little bit of background information about fireflies so that I understood them a little bit more to be able to read this article. In the next section, Night Courting, the author's main reason for writing that was to teach the reader and to inform us about how fireflies mate and how they use light in order to help them mate. So, in that section, what I did as a reader was I thought about my topic, fireflies, and I thought, what is the author trying to teach me about fireflies in this section? Moving on, in the next section, Light Factory, the author was teaching me about fireflies, specifically how their light is created, and more information about where it comes from and how it's made in their bodies. And in this last section, Firefly Watching, the author was teaching us when we could see fireflies and giving us a little bit of tips on how to approach a firefly in order to help them come closer to us so we could watch them a little bit closer. In this last text feature, Talking to Fireflies, I noticed that the author was kind of giving us steps in order to take, in order to do sort of like an experiment to watch fireflies come close to us and to be able to communicate with them using light. So now that we've read the entire text, we've thought about our topic and what the author was teaching us about the topic, we should be able to come up with a main idea for the text. Right now, I want you to think what was the author's or what was the main idea of this text based on all of the sections that we read and all of the information that the author was teaching us about fireflies. Pause the video here and write it down. Great. We're going to keep that main idea in mind as we're answering questions about our text. So let's scroll down. So we have 6 multiple choice questions here that we need to answer. I need to write myself a note that I need to go back to the text for evidence for every single multiple choice question that I answer. Because if I can't find evidence to back it up, then that means that my answer is not based on the text. It's probably based on my personal thoughts. So I'm going to remind myself evidence Before I even start, I'm going to put that in my head so I know that in order to complete my task here, I need to have marked evidence for every single question in the text. Right now, you're picking up your pencil and you're going to answer questions 1 through 6, finding evidence for every question. Pause the video here and do that now. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about these answers. But wait, if you're realizing that this big word, evidence, isn't something that you just did when you were answering those questions, then you need to pause again and you need to go back and find evidence to support every single one of your answer choices. If you already did that, you're going to keep watching and you're going to keep going over with me. Number one, according to the article, which sense does the firefly use to communicate with other fireflies? Sight, taste, smell, hearing. I've got to scroll back up to my text to find some evidence to help me answer this question. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look in the section Night Courting. I'll give you a second to get there. When reading that section, Night Courting, I realized that fireflies communicate by flashing lights. It says here that each kind has its own special pattern of flashing so that males and females of the same species can find each other in the dark. Well, I know that if fireflies are communicating using flashing lights, if they're using it to find each other, then of course they're using their sense of sight because you have to be able to see the light that the fireflies are flashing. So here I can infer that because fireflies are using flashing lights to communicate, to help them find each other in the dark, that they are using their sense of sight in order to communicate with each other. So the answer here would be A. In the text, it does not talk about fireflies tasting anything to communicate. It does not talk about fireflies smelling anything to communicate. And it doesn't tell us much information about what they can or cannot hear. The entire article is based on fireflies using their flashing lights to communicate with each other. And if they're using lights to communicate, then they've got to be able to see those lights. Moving on to number 2. According to the article, why would a female firefly blink brightly? To find a place to lay eggs? To help her see in the dark? To show her interest in a particular male? To scare off enemies that are chasing her? I'm going to scroll up to my text to help me answer this. And I'm going to go ahead and look in the section called Night Courting once again. I want you to find paragraph 7. Tell me when you're there. Okay, I hope we're all looking at paragraph 7. In paragraph 7, it says, as fireflies talk, the male comes closer and closer, but the two don't always end up mating. Males that flash faster or brighter than average firefly may get a super bright reaction from the female. So I see here that the author has mentioned the bright reaction that number 2 is asking about. So now I'm going to go back up and think, when I reread that sentence, why is that female reacting super bright? And it's because the male has flashed faster or brighter than the average firefly. So let's go back to the answer choices and see which one matches what we just read. To find a place to lay eggs? No. To help her see in the dark? No. To show her interest in a particular male? Well, it didn't exactly say that. To scare off enemies that are chasing her? No. So if I know a firefly, a female firefly, blinks brightly in reaction to a male that was super quick with the light or was really bright, then I can assume that the female is trying to show her interest in that male because the male impressed her. So, C here would be a correct answer choice. Moving on to number 3. According to the article, what is one reason a person might see different patterns of light produced by fireflies? You know what I have to do? I've got to scroll back up to the article in order to answer this. I want us all to take a look at firefly watching. Tell me when you're there. In firefly watching, it talked a lot about humans watching fireflies. So this might seem like a appropriate place to look for our answer. Fireflies are active in early summer, especially on warm, moist, moonless nights. Watch carefully for the differences between kinds of fireflies. Some kinds come out at dusk, others don't come out until it's completely dark. Some flash yellow, some green, some orange. Some float slowly just above the ground, others cruise at eye level or flit among the treetops. Some kinds of fireflies flash for only about 20 minutes a night, others flash for hours. So that paragraph was telling me about all the differences in the kinds of fireflies. Let's hold on to that piece of information. Why might a person see different patterns of light produced by fireflies? There are other kinds of insects in the area. Well, this text only talks about fireflies, so that would be an incorrect inference to make. It's not based on the text. The light of a firefly appears brighter at night. No, the text didn't necessarily say that. There is a variety of firefly species in the area. The colors of light change depending on the time of night. The author definitely didn't say that. But let's make sure C is correct. What does this answer choice mean by variety? Well, a variety just means that there is difference. So there is different in firefly species in the area. Yep, that's exactly what the text was saying. Because there are different types of fireflies, you'll see different patterns of light. Moving on to number 4. What is the main purpose of the section titled Talking to Fireflies? This is great because this is connected to exactly what you are already annotating for in your text. Let's go back to the section Talking to Fireflies. I want you to go back to your notes and what you jot down about this section. What was the author teaching you about the topic fireflies in this section, and what could have been the main idea or the main objective? So I know that in the section Talking to Fireflies, the author was trying to teach me how I, a reader, could help myself learn how to communicate or talk to a firefly. So let's go ahead and scroll back down to our answer choices. To give information about how fireflies create light, it did not talk about that in that section. It did talk about that in the text, but remember, this question is asking about the Talking to Fireflies section. To give information about where to find fireflies, again, I think this text is kind of trying to trick us. That was mentioned in the text, but it was not mentioned in the section Talking to Fireflies, so it's not correct. To give directions for keeping fireflies as pets, well, the author never suggested that we do that. D, to give directions for communicating with fireflies. Wow, in the blurb for that section, it says exactly that. You can talk them into coming closer to you. That means that I'm trying to learn how to communicate with fireflies. The answer choice here is D. Number 5. How is this article mainly organized? Here, we're going to think about the text we just read, because there is obviously no part of the text where the author stated, This text is organized as blank. No, we have to think about the way the information was given to us, the reader, in order to help us answer this question. A. Problem and solution. Well, there was no problem that was mentioned in our text or a solution. And we know that we were annotating for a topic and what the author was teaching us about the topic. So our annotations were not connected to that, and the text was not connected to that either. C, by comparing and contrasting ideas. Again, we weren't annotating for that, and the author was never comparing and contrasting ideas. The text was simply about fireflies. From the most important ideas to the least. No part of the text was more important than another part. It was all important information helping to teach us about fireflies and how they communicate. Here, our annotations really help us answer this question because we knew that this was nonfiction, so we were tracking for the topic and details that taught us about the topic. And that's what answer choice B says, by topic with supporting details. The correct answer here is B. Our annotations help us to notice that. Last one. Which of the following best describes the author's tone in the article? I want you to turn and talk to the person next to you or to yourself. What does author's tone mean? Okay, so when you're thinking about author's tone, you're exactly right. You are thinking about how the author's use of words conveys their attitude about the topic. So we know our topic here was fireflies. We need to think about, based on what the author said in this text and the words that they used, what could their attitude be towards this topic? Joking and humorous. Well, I don't remember any jokes in this text. Do you? No, this just doesn't fit. The author wasn't really joking around with us or trying to make the reader laugh throughout the text. Strong and persuasive. Persuasive means that the author was trying to convince us of something or of their argument. In this text, the author wasn't trying to convince us of any argument that they had. This couldn't be it. Serious and questioning. Well, the author really never asked us any questions in this text, so that couldn't possibly be it. D, friendly and informative. The author's words were pretty friendly in this text, and they were informing us about how fireflies communicate. So I would say that based on what we read in this text, D would be the best answer that describes the author's tone. Wow, guys, we flew through that. So let's move on. Next is going to be writing. Let's read the prompt together. Based on the article, explain why fireflies might be considered interesting insects. Support your answer with important information from the article. Wow, this question really hit the nail on the head there. Support your answer with important information from the article. So you know what that means. Right now, in order to write this essay, you've got to go back to the text and you've got to find your evidence that you're going to use to make your essay super strong. So keeping this question in mind, why might fireflies be considered interesting insects? This means, what about fireflies, what aspects about them could make them interesting to anybody in general? Not specifically to you, not your opinion about fireflies, but what about fireflies in this text could be interesting and make them interesting insects? Right now, your job is to go back into the text and find the evidence that you're going to use in your essay. Pause the video and do that now. All right, guys, well, if you went back in the text and you found your evidence that you're going to use in your essay, then that means you're super prepared to write a fully developed essay that's going to be really strong. So Your job right now is to open up your assignment on Google Classroom that is labeled Wednesday, March 25th, with the name of this text, and you're going to write your essay in Google Classroom. So that way your teacher can give you feedback on your writing. Remember, you're not writing the writing in your packet. You're going into Google Classroom, you're logging onto your computer, putting in your email address, and accessing the document so that you can turn it in and submit your work. If you have any questions about that, reach out to your teachers after you finish this video and they'll help you figure out how to do that. Go ahead and get started on your essays, guys. Can't wait to read them and give you lots of feedback. Awesome class today. I love the participation. Super engaged. I hope you learned a lot. It was so fun working with you today. I'll see you guys tomorrow.